A class clown ends up having a seizure after making a mistake in one of his pranks, light bulbs exploding in the middle of the class, and the compass accidentally getting stuck in a student's buttock. Hey, what's up, people? Today's question is, when did the class clown take it too far? Story 1. Kid was always doing dumb stunts, just to make people laugh. He got sick of climbing on random things and jumping stairs one day, and decided it'd be funny to smack into walls. His first few walls were fine, as they were all concrete. There was a girl crying in the hallway, and he figured he could make her laugh by making a funny face and tackling the glass door. He went through the door and needed stitches, leaving splatters of blood and broken glass on the way to the office. Story 2. Senior year. The teacher wouldn't give her a hall pass to use the bathroom, which was ridiculous. Instead of taking a more conventional stand, like walking out of the room, she sat down at her desk and pissed her pants. She was suspended. I forget for how long there were editorials back and forth in the school paper. I was on team. Teachers shouldn't try to control our bowels, but also maybe don't piss on the floor, though I do appreciate your taking one for the team. Story 3. When I was in 3rd grade, we were all doing our thing, coloring, reading, etc. The class clown was being really noisy and kept goofing off. We were all having fun, and the class clown eventually sat down. It wasn't long before he was laying on the floor, foaming out of his mouth, shaking violently. We all laughed. It was a joke, right? Before long, the teacher came rushing over to see the new joke the kid came up with. She immediately called 911, and he was rushed out of the room. He had a seizure, while the whole class thought he was joking. He recovered, and everything was fine. I just feel bad for the kid. Story 4. I knew a guy, a high school student in the late 60s. He and his best friend were very close, but they had also dated the same girl. My buddy dated this girl first. Now the friend is dating her. No problems, but they both understood how this could be perceived as a potential friendship end. They had a joke all planned out. The best friend grabbed some ketchup packets from a fast food restaurant. After lunch, he was sitting in class with the packets torn slightly and tucked unnoticeably in his hand. My buddy had the starter pistol from the track and field team. You see where this is going. My buddy ran into the classroom and shouted, "You can't steal my girl from me! If I can't have her, no one can!" He fired the starter pistol, filled with blanks, not bullets, in the direction of his best friend. The friend, who had jumped up from his desk during the shouting, clutched his chest from the fake bullet wound, sending horrifying streaks of red, ketchup, flying all over his white t-shirt. He collapsed. The look of horror on the faces of every student in the room, my buddy said, was amazing. He and his best friend both got detention. Sometimes I think about this story, and I wonder what would happen if high school students tried this in a post-Columbine world. It's crazy how much time changes in just a couple of generations. Story 5. My friend decided to shove his hands into my back pockets and grab my ass. He wasn't wearing a belt. Ended up panting me straight to the floor. I was wearing spandexy type underwear at the time. Caught those on the way down too, and ended up like pulling it down to where my sprung out of them. What was bad was worse, as our track coach had just walked in looking for me, and she got a full frontal. Not to mention, the class saw everything, and I tried to pull my pants up only to realize my dick was out on full display. They didn't even get detention. Story 6. In 4th grade, we had a kid who disrupted class all the time because he couldn't keep still. It had snowed, and we were walking around the room doing an assignment. The teacher went to the class next door for a minute. This kid ran out the door to the field, right outside the door, and made a snowball and threw it in the classroom, hitting a huge light bulb that exploded, sending glass everywhere. Everyone screamed, teachers came running in, and we never saw that kid again. This was in the 1970s, so they probably drugged him up and put him in a different school. Story 7. In my English class, we all tried to be class clowns most of the time. However, the one time my friend took it too far was when, at the end of the class, the teacher would go around picking up all the textbooks from each table while we stood waiting. When the teacher came around to collect his textbook, she lifted it up, and my friend had unzipped his trousers, put his wanger through, and hid it under the book. she screamed, and everyone else was so shocked at the sight of him standing there with his wanger flopped out on the table. But before anyone could say anything, he looks down and pretends to scream in fright as well, as if he did not know what he was looking at, as he lifts his arm up and proceeds to karate chop his own in front of my teacher and the entire class. The lad got excluded for a day and got put in a new English class. Story 8. In my first year of teaching, I had a nightmare student who was absolutely awful. He wanted to be a comedian, but every day was him shouting out profanity, harassing the girls, climbing desks, and so on. He got suspended for a week for pulling his pants down and flashing the girls. If I turned my back for 3 seconds, he'd be at my computer trying to search for Most of the kids in the class couldn't stand him. He thought he was being funny, but he was acting like an animal. Story 9. I tripped a kid who was running for lunch back when I was in high school. He didn't get back up. He thought he'd broken his leg. Ambulance called. Kid taken away in full view of well over 1,000 plus. I got called out quite rightly for the I'd been. And then, thankfully, I was comforted by the same kids when I became distraught at the thought of what I'd done to this poor kid. After a rather sleepless and guilt-ridden night, I found out that he had a dead leg and was fine. 30 years later, and I still freak out at what 14-year-old me did. I am so sorry, Tristan. Story 10. While in class, he pulled out a bag of cocaine and started doing lines while laughing, asking the people around him if they wanted some. Everyone looked horrified, including the teacher. She escorted everyone out except him while the principal and school officer were called. To this day, I really don't understand how he thought that would make anyone laugh. Story 11. There's this kid in class who is struggling financially in life. He's a kind kid though. We hang out sometimes and we're kind of close. Let's call this kid Francis. One day, it was raining really hard, and Francis rarely goes to school when the weather is bad because he can't afford to commute by public transportation, and his family doesn't own any vehicles. Plus, it was January. So, when he did get to school on that rainy day, I was surprised. He walked all the way here with an umbrella. The day went by, and it's almost over. The weather was still rainy, and we were about to go. We were chatting and laughing, and we failed to expect the holes all over Francis's umbrella. The class clown, let's call him Martin, laughed, pointing at Francis. Francis was a small 4'8" inches kid in 8th grade, and Martin would always bully him for that, which seems funny to him, but it isn't for the class or for Francis. But this time, what Martin did to Francis made Francis cry. He explained to me that the umbrella he had was something his family got for free during Christmas. The fact that Francis is barely getting by and has a valuable item destroyed made me furious. But I didn't want to say anything because Francis told me not to tell the teacher. Although, the next day, the teacher addressed an issue about someone's umbrella getting broken. Francis was totally silent, and Martin was looking away. The whole class speculated that Martin did it, and the teacher confirmed it. Martin was called for detention, asked if he could buy Francis a new umbrella, and had to do charity work for a week. Story 12. Amongst the boys in 5th grade, farting was hilarious. It got old after a bit, and he didn't get the reaction he was used to getting, so he thought he'd do the one thing that was sure to get a laugh. He took a dump and spread it across 3 of the bins outside the classroom. It's safe to say he didn't shit anywhere other than the toilets after a school-wide assembly was called to point it out. Story 13. Held a geometry compass on a chair, needle side up. Expectation. Kid sits down gingerly, gets poked on the buns, and immediately jumps up. Everyone has a laugh. All is well with the world. Reality. Kid plops himself on the chair, gets stabbed in the derriere. Everyone gasps in horror. All is not well with said kid. Story 14. In our first year of middle school, we met the class clown, a funny little white f***er. It was the most entertaining part of school for us, and he usually pushed the boundaries. But that's why people liked him and found him a funny character, because he went overboard and it was always a blast. But one time, like yesterday, he hatched a plan for everyone to hide in the classroom from the teacher. We followed, all hiding. The problem was that the roll was done every 40 minutes to prevent wagging. The teacher came and freaked the f*** out. ran to the headmaster's office, and the whole school went into lockdown. We didn't know it was because of us, so it stayed hidden for an hour. All of our parents were sent lengthy emails regarding our little prank. We agreed not to dob on the class clown, but some spilled the beans, and he got suspended. When he came back, he wasn't quite the same class clown he was, and we all missed him. We still talk about this to this day, and it is often the first topic we go to when we catch up every now and then. Well, people, so much for today's last story. Remember that you can write me some of your funniest stories in the comments. I'm collecting the best ones to make a video with your best stories.